Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a brand new edition of PTV FC. We have a lot on our plate to talk about today. Graham, I see you're in a crazy location. Talk to me about where you are.
Well, currently I am in Rome, Italy right now on a school trip with Seton Hall, and I've been here for the past 10 days now and heading back on June 1st. It's been an amazing experience so far. Got to go to a Roma game. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but yeah, I'm in Rome and it's been an amazing experience so far.
And I was going to make fun of you for the grainy video, but you are like 3,000 miles away. So I guess I won't do that. I'll just fix it in post. It'll look fine. But you've been in Rome. You've been to a few football games. Tell us how the experience is just being in a stadium where everyone is so in tune to the game and what's happening.
Well, when we went, we took the bus across because we're on the opposite side of the city. They're the most north. We're kind of in the central city. And we took the bus there. And while we were on our bus ride to right outside the Stadio Olimpica, the bus got stopped. And we were like, well, why is the bus stopping? And on our left, all the team bus drives by. And all of the ultras for Roma come by on their little Vespos or their little scooters with flares and flags. Everyone in the streets is screaming. It was just an amazing experience. And this is just on the way to the stadium. We weren't even inside yet. We weren't even that close to the stadium, really. And everyone was just chanting and yelling. And it was just an amazing thing to see firsthand, especially. Just seeing, I might not be a Roma fan, but seeing a game and seeing the experience of it in person, just as a football fan in general, it was absolutely surreal.
Yeah, that
And
sounds
before we went in.
right. That sounds awesome. I mean, I just wish American sports had that kind of passion behind them where people are in the streets just cheering as loud as they possibly can, like what, an hour before the game even starts? Like that must have been so cool for you. But I see you have a Roma jersey on. Roma's gonna play some pretty important games soon. They're gonna be in the Europa League final. Give me your thoughts on that final and what do you think will happen with Roma?
Well, Roma is playing Sevilla, and they did rest a few of their main players during that last game we went to because they were just playing Salerno. It wasn't that important of a game, even though that entire 100,000 seat stadium was filled to the brim. We actually had to get very expensive tickets just to get in, which did include the Roma Lounge and the 1927 Club, I believe. So we got free champagne and all that good stuff. Really, a lot of benefits. And we sat 4 rows behind the benches, behind the Roma bench. And so I got to see Jose Mourinho, who, as a Chelsea fan, is just, it was almost surreal just seeing him right there in person. And because for me, he's like the special one, for Chelsea especially. And that crowd was immaculate. So I assume they'll be the same way for this Europa League final. And I Sevilla's a very good team. They did just beat Juventus in order to go to this final. So we'll be watching it in the Piazza del Popolo, where they set up a big screen and all the fans come to watch the games. So I'm very excited to see how it turns out.
So that game will take place on Wednesday, March. No, we're not in March. Wednesday, May 31st. Sevilla currently ninth in La Liga, and Roma is sixth in Serie A. Like you said, Sevilla defeated Juventus, which was a huge win to get there, and Roma defeated Bayer Leverkusen on aggregate in order to get to the final. So I'm excited to see what happens. I hope for you Roma wins. I mean, gosh, being in Italy to watch Roma win would be absolutely bonkers. So I think it's going to be a good game. And I also like how the final is one off. Like before then, there were two legs, home and away. But now it's the final. There's only one game, only one time for a team to go out and secure that victory. And I think we might see some extra time. That's my opinion. I very well think it could be tied after 90. So I think that's something that could happen. But
I'm
another,
just
yep. Go ahead, Graham.
I'm just so happy that I'm able to watch this game here because we leave the next morning at like 5 a.m. to get to the airport. So Roma win. I'm expecting to not get back to this hotel until 5 a.m. because the streets will be flooded, the city will be amazing, and I'm just praying they win because I just want to be here for that experience.
Yeah, whether you want to or not, it's going to be hard to get back to the hotel until 5 a.m. But you definitely should live it up. party. And you are someone of legal age in Italy, so
Yes,
that
I
must be
am.
very nice. We have to disclose that
Hmm.
for all of our viewers out there. Graham right now is currently legal just because he's not in America, so that is a added bonus. I'm 21, so it doesn't matter for me, but for you, that must be pretty
Yeah.
cool. And something else
Yeah,
that would
it's
be
nice.
pretty bonkers is if the other Italian team, Inter, could take a victory and defeat Manchester City in the UCL finals. Now that would be something that I think is a little bit less likely to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Man City, they they pulled it off again in the Premier League. They pulled it off again, and this team might be probably one of the best Premier League teams we've ever seen play. Maybe they struggled and had their ups and downs throughout the season here and there, but they are definitely probably one of the best teams on their day out of any team we've ever seen play football in the history of the sport. So I think for Inter, it's going to be a difficult challenge, but I mean, Serie A is on the up, Louis. We have three teams from Serie A in all three European finals. We got Fiorentina in the Conference League, Roma in the Europa League, and now we have Inter in the Champions League finals. So I think it's going to be very hard for Inter to pull that game out, and I definitely think Man City is going to win, but I think it would be very exciting for Serie A to see any of those teams win one of those finals.
Yeah, and you talked about Serie A being on the up and up. I mean, Serie A is a league that has always been defensive. So I would not be surprised if they look back at Real Madrid, the film on Real Madrid, and how they played against Erling Haaland and tried to replicate that. They have very good defenders in De Vrij, I think that's his name. I think that's how you say it. And a Serbi, I think that's how you say it. Acerbi. The dude's a good player. I don't know how to say his name, but the dude is a good player. So these
Yeah.
they only have three in the back though, so I will look for their wing backs to drop down, or their wing players to drop back. But I think Inter will at least have an idea of how to try and stop Holland because Real Madrid did it for two legs. But I just look at Man City and you see the immense amount of talent that they have on their squad, and I don't think it's going to matter because, like looking back at the Real Madrid game, they did a good job of defending Holland, but Man City was still able to put up 3 goals on Real Madrid's dome. So I think that that's something that we could very well see in this one-off game in the UCL final, which will happen on June 1st, I believe. I lied. June 10th, Olympic Stadium. That's where it's going to take place. So it should be a great matchup. Really looking forward to it. And going back to Real Madrid versus Man City for a second, a lot of the reports were saying that this is going to be an even game. It's going to be a toss-up. Real Madrid has, the history of winning the Champions League, and then always it's overcoming the hump for Man City. And I was like, I think City is going to win. I mean, they're home. Like they didn't do very good the game prior. I think they're going to bounce back, and sure enough, they did. They ended up winning 3-0, and that was that was a statement game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's Real Madrid. I mean, every time they play in the Champions League, it's just a different team than when they play in any other competition. I feel like they are the Champions League. Like that's what the team owns it. They have the most. They win it almost at least once every 2 or 3 years, and 3 years in a row some cases. But like they own the Champions League, and seeing them in a do or die game at away, especially not perform to the level that we expect to see from Manchester or from Real Madrid really surprised me. It really surprised me that not only did they lose, but they lost in such a uninspired way. They really didn't look like they came to play very much, and they really, really seemed like a team that was off focus and not what we're used to seeing from a Real Madrid team in the Champions League.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of Real Madrid perhaps being off focus, like you said, and a little bit of this City team is just one of the best ever. Like I mean, it's hard to focus up for 90 minutes against a squad that has the caliber of this. I can hear the sirens, the European sounding sirens in the background, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, the mayor actually was staying in this hotel, the mayor of Rome,
Wow.
for the past couple of days. So, and there's a parade I think going on, there's a holiday coming up I think on June 2nd. So there's been a lot of police activity going around the last few days. in front of the Forum in the Coliseum, which, by the way, amazing sights. If you ever come to Rome, you need to see it.
Yeah, I've been to Italy and I just cannot wait to go back. Cannot advocate it for going to Italy more. I know it might be a bit expensive, but I'm half Italian, so being there was a surreal experience. But staying on the topic of Manchester City, now transitioning to the Premier League, they have won. They've secured the title. I think this is the sixth time in the last 7 years that they've won the Premier League title. Poor Ryan Johnson, poor Arsenal. They had a few rough games towards the end, and they just slipped up in the standings enough for Man City to jump them and then eventually take the lead and win the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, I expected this to happen after that 3-3 draw with Southampton. And the guy on Arsenal TV, he's like the head of Arsenal TV. You know, Arsenal TV has some of the craziest people you'll see say the most ridiculous stuff, and they're great clips. You should go watch them. But he said after that 3-3 draw, he said, we will not win the Premier League. He said, we bottled it now, even though they were still ahead by 4 points at the time. He said, we bottled it. It's over. We will not win. This team is not ready to win the Premier League, especially against this Man City team. And I mean, he was right. I felt a similar way. I said, if they're going to get results against a team that finished bottom of the table, and they're not going to, especially when it's such an important game, like they could have gone up 7 points at that point. They weren't ready. They're not ready to win the Prem. And I don't think the team will do as good as they did this year, next year. I think this might have been a one-off. The team were very inspired after the what happened last season, where they kind of folded and missed out on European football. And now that they're going to have 4 competitions next year, they're going to have Champions League, and then the rest of the competitions, I don't think they'll do as good. I think part of the reason this year they did so well was because they did have Europa League, but Europa League isn't as hard of a competition to plan for, especially when you're going into like the Champions League, and that's the holy crown of football. You win the Champions League, that brings you success for the next 5 years, in my opinion. So we'll have to see how Arsenal will do next year, but I don't think they will finish as highly as they did this year, especially with other teams like Newcastle and United, and hopefully Chelsea with a bounce back season. But yeah, it's going to be difficult to say.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, because Ryan Johnson had talked about that earlier. He was almost happy that they were not playing as much European football as they normally do, because he said they could focus more on the Prem. And at first I didn't really believe him. I was like, well, isn't it better like getting your players more reps and having, the younger players be able to play at like big stage? But he was totally correct in saying that. And we saw that this season with them having such a good, I'll say 3/4 of the season. So it really did help them. And then to your point, I do think it's going to degrade their performance a little bit, because 1, they're going to be playing more games in general, and 2, assuming Chelsea's not like 10th this year, same thing with Man U, it's going to be more competitive next year, and 3, it's going to be harder because I think Man City could again run away with it. Erling Haaland broke the goal record this year. I mean, I don't expect that to happen again, but who knows? He could set it again, because he's Erling Haaland. I don't really know what the future holds for him in the Premier League, but nonetheless, it's going to be more challenging next year than it is this year, certainly. So for that, I agree. Now, you have a Roma jersey on. I have a Dortmund jersey on. It's the Marco Reus jersey that I was given for Christmas from my parents. Shout out them. But we have to talk about it, I feel like. And it was quite a topsy-turvy game. It was very unfortunate in the end. Dortmund ended up drawing 2-2 to FC Mainz, and which would have been good enough if the penalty equalizer from Cologne stayed. But Bayern Munich ended up scoring a goal very close to the end of the game, which then set them 1 point ahead of Dortmund and gave them the title for the 11th year in a row, which is a pretty astounding accomplishment. But the Dortmund game itself was so extremely disheartening to watch as a fan, because they had so many good chances. There was a penalty that Sebastian Haller missed. There was another penalty that could have been VAR'd and then eventually called. Had it gone to VAR, I think Dortmund had 20 plus shots like on net in that game, and if not on net, then it was 20 plus shots in general. And then it was those 2 goals early from Mainz in the first half that really kind of sealed the deal for Dortmund. They were both off headers, and they were virtually unmarked. So that was too much for Dortmund to overcome. They eventually scored the second goal in, I don't know, the 96th minute when there's only 5 minutes of added time. And it just was not enough to capture the victory and the title.
Yeah, Louie, I mean, you're a strong man for being able to talk about this about a half hour removed from the confirmation of losing the title. And I mean, my Bundesliga team that I support is Bayern. So, of course, happy for number 11 in a row. Great game from both teams. I thought that Dortmund really they didn't look uninspired, at least. They really wanted to win that game. They really put everything there was on the line. And like you had told me before we started recording, seeing Royce, the man you're wearing on the back of that jersey, just the look of just disappointment. Like, he's never won it before, never won the Bundesliga. This was his year to do it, and you just fall short. It's sad. It's really sad. And will you guys be able to go at it again next year? Who knows? I mean, you're probably going to be losing Jude Bellingham in the summer, and you're going to be losing some other players maybe that will be sold to bigger teams for a lot of money. But I'm sorry, Louis. I know it's hard for you. I feel terrible. I really do.
Yeah, that was not an ideal situation. Something I did gain from that though is I forgot just how hectic the final match day of the season is in a league like soccer, like the Bundesliga or the Premier League. It was giving me like Manchester City and Manchester United vibes that one year when Man U went up and then City went up and ended up winning. So there's nothing like that. Like that was edge of your seat, like just like tuned in. What's going on in this game? What's going on in the Bayern game? And I knew when Cologne tied it with a penalty, I was like, this is far from over. And I was thinking, I was like, please just like at least score a goal to tie it. And they eventually did. But I had a feeling like it's Bayern Munich. It's the best team in the the best team in the Bundesliga for the last 11 years. I had a feeling they weren't just going to roll over and die. And that was exactly what happened. Bayern Munich ended up getting that goal. But it was like you said, it was a good showing for Borussia Dortmund. The entire time they were hyping up the fans, they were hyping up themselves, they were running, and also something that I love is both league title games as well as relegation games are some of the best soccer games you can watch. I mean, there's very minimally flopping. The only injuries are actual injuries that happen. Like it's very physical, it's very fast paced. Everyone's playing their heart out. Like those to me are the best games, and it was quite a good game for Borussia Dortmund, but it just not enough to seal the deal, which is so extremely unfortunate. You asked if they can run it back next year. I mean, I think they can. They're going to lose Jude Bellingham. And they're probably going to lose one of their strikers. Mukoko will probably stay because he's young. I think Modeste will be gone. Sebastian Aller will probably stay. I think Royce's contract is up, which I'm not sure about. He might have signed one more year into the next year. So it's either this year or after next year. His contract will be up, but he's going to live and die as a Borussia Dortmund player. So I'm not really worried about that. But I think they will have a chance to run it back next year because Erling Haaland was gone, and they still had a really, really good showing, which is pretty wild to me that they were closer to winning the league without Haaland than they were with Haaland. But nonetheless, I think they can run it back. But like this was the year, like this was the time to do it. I mean, they had it in the palm of their hand. They had a home game, the final game of the season. All they had to do was win, and they were unable to do so.
Yeah, very. It's sad. It's sad to see is when they win it every year. I'm not complaining, but they win it every year, and this is your year, Louis, for you, and it didn't happen. So I'm real sorry for you that is the way it had to go down.
Yeah, and sometimes it'd be like that. But Eden Tadgett, that's I might have butchered his name. That's Borussia Dortmund's manager. I'm excited to have another season under him. I think he's a really good manager. And I like the tactics that he employs. I like the in-game situational stuff that he does as well. So if Borussia Dortmund is winning, he's not going to just sit back and take on pressure. He's going to go out and try to score that second goal to seal it. So I'm excited in that aspect for next year. Any closing remarks, Greg?
I mean, for this video in general, I'll be getting some footage from the Piazza del Popolo on the 31st. I'm real excited to watch that Europa League final here in Italy, here with all the fans and everything. This is Rome's team. Roma is Rome's team, not Lazio. I've learned that the hard way. You don't bring up Lazio around here, and I'm just excited, and Dai Roma. That's all I have to say.
All right, that sounds good to me. Now, Graham, this is probably one of the last times, at least in this season of PTV FC, that we'll be on a podcast together, because after both of these tournaments are over and we hop on and talk about what happened, I mean, we got a little bit of a break because there isn't international play like there was last year with the World Cup. So this might be, this is the not the season finale. What's like the one before that? Like the almost season finale, I guess you could say. But that will do it for
Yeah.
this episode of PTV FC. For Graham Marshman, my name is Louie Pasculli. It was a pleasure. And Graham, I'm sure you're having a lot of fun in Rome. So get back to doing all the good things that Italy has to offer. Wait until next time. We'll talk about the UCL as well as the Europa League's final. But that'll do it for this episode. So we'll see you next time.